Thank you for inviting to this important meeting. And my topic is STEM education. As Professor Mia, and talk about my background. I am a recipient of a Fulbright 2 times, and also they are working teachers in Africa, Asia, and Europe, and quite a bit. And also in the United States. I've been in the United States 26 years, and originally came to the United States as a doctoral student. So 45 minutes is too short to talk about the STEM education. So my topics are STEM education is a paradigm, and the research agenda on STEM education, and then what research says about the STEM education, and then what does this all mean about it. And some of you sitting here might argue STEM education is not a paradigm, but I argue it's a paradigm. And I asked my graduate assistant to check all the United Nations in terms of STEM education. And 148 countries are talking about STEM education and doing something in one way or another in STEM education. In Syria, Monaco, and other countries, 9 countries, are not talking about the STEM education somehow. And then the STEM education is not new in science, pure sciences. But I would argue it's new in science education. And so, for example, the biochemistry was established in 18th centuries and 19th centuries, and then also the molecular biology in 20th centuries. So it has a long history. When the biology, when they see the biochemistry, people, and they thought that they're crazy. And now biochemistry is popular and as a distinctive area of study. And just like that, and STEM education is a fairly new, and so then why STEM education is a paradigm then? Well, 21st century society requires the students to learn science in an integrated way. So they are not happy with the traditional way of learning in sciences. So they integrate sciences, the 4 areas. That's a STEM education. Why is a paradigm? Well, Einstein's special relativity, probably you might recall the special relativity. It was published there the 1908, and that was only accepted in 1938. When Einstein published that theory, and the people think that he's crazy because we need a special relativity in the space when there is no great gravity, and so between time and the space and the speed of light, the functions differently when there is a great gravity on the Earth. So Newton's mechanics, the theory doesn't work in the space. So his idea was proven by 3 major experiments. So it took almost 30 years to accept his theory as true. just like that, STEM education has a long history too. 1980s, project synthesis. That report actually brought the STEM idea, science and technology and society. So the project synthesis was reported by Norris Harm and his colleague, and that time, 1967, and when the Sputnik was launched by the Soviet Union, and the United States was shocked, and so they put the science in a context of technology and society, and so they focus more on disciplinary knowledge and skills than the applied sciences. So the NSF, National Science Foundation, and funded that project, and all the scientists gathered together as a team in 6 areas, and they are, the study about what's the difference between what is being taught in science classroom and then what is being performed out in the society. So there is a big difference, and in terms of biology, one area, Roger Bybee and Bob Yeager as a team, and then they just reported, and there's a big difference. And then United States science education failed to produce the citizens, informed citizens who make a right decision. So after that, and put the science in the context of technology and society, and the STS movement, and that was a full-fledged in the 1980s, and then that idea developed into a STEM in the 1990s. The STEM idea was initiated by the NSF, and then 1996, there was a standard, National Science Education Standard, was published, and then in 2013, after the 20 years or so, that is a big time to change the science education, which is the next generation science standard, NGSS. So what I meant by is that the STEM education started, that idea was initiated in the 1980s, and then finally established as a sort of a distinctive area of study in 2013. It's almost took 30 years. So that project and that initiated idea, and during that time, 1980s, the NSF used a lot of tax money into kind of efforts to promote this STS, which is Math and Science Partnership. I was serving as a proposal review panel for 6 years in at NSF, and this is one of them, MSF Partnership. So how to integrate the math and science in school setting, and to produce the students who make good and right decisions to solve the problem. So this idea is that connecting the higher ed institution and the schools, they have a partnership, but yet they invited business and interest, business and industry, and also community organizations, and then State Department of Education, and then also the informal education too. So they put it all together in the science teaching setting, and so they could, they produce the students who are able to solve the problem. And so MSP, so Math and Science Partnership, has been almost 7 years, and then there are 145 project was funded by NSF, and then this is the areas for 7 years. And as you can see there, and comprehensive partnership, and then targeted partnership, and then also the NSF START partnership. Those are different levels of a partnership NSF funded, and so that STEM integrated education was initiated, and then also they are fully functional at the school level. Not just the learning science separately, but also learning science in an integrated way, so that the students who are able to solve the problem, when they graduate schools. And this is a huge impact on science education and math education too. As you can see there, and there's a big gap was reduced by the project. And then after the MSP and the science educators get together and then put that as a standard. This is a very landmark of science education. So 1996, when the NSF initiated the STEM, STEM education, and the NSES, and they put the language there, science and technology as a big standard. When you talk about the standard, and probably you might be used to it, but in America, in the United States, was not used to it because there was no standard before that. So there was a big time. And so science and technology put it together are being taught in school level. And so every single student, has to learn about it. That's a big movement. And then after 20 years or so, and 2013, there was another standard was published. This is new because before 2013, they were all talking about the science and technology and society. There was no mathematics, there's no engineering. So this is a new era in the United States. We added the engineering piece to science education. So as you can see there, scientists do the work differently from engineers. Science start with the question, but the engineers start with the problems, and then finally find the solution through all the process. So there is a distinction of a science and engineering. So teachers are in the United States are trained how to teach science, how to teach engineering. So there is a practices and expectations of teaching as a scientist, a science teacher, through their teacher education programs. This is new, and so why am I claiming that STEM education is a paradigm? Well, because of, as you can see, the special relativity, it took almost 30 years through the experiments, and then they prove it. And then also so is STEM education, and the 1970s and 80s, and then all the way to 2013. It took almost 30 years. What do they do? And NSF, use the money to fund all the efforts of increasing STEM education, and then to gather evidence that shows increased knowledge and skills of STEM. And so you might argue about that. But so now, that said, then STEM education definition, I know there are a lot of confusions. There are a lot of unclear area of STEM education as a teacher and as a student, as a scholar. So there are a couple of, I just brought it a couple of STEM education, the definitions. But as you can see there, it's an approach. It's not a curriculum. And also, it's an integrated way of teaching. So those are two key ideas. Probably you will notice that from the different type of definitions there. The Raja Baibi, and I like its definition, is STEM education, for example, is teach science and mathematical concept based on in the context of technology and engineering. So, if you teach science and technology, is that STEM? Yes, according to his definition. If you teach science and engineering, is that STEM education? Yes. If you teach science and technology engineering, 3 areas, that's also STEM. In the 4 areas, of course it's a STEM. If you teach more than 4, arts and humanity, is a STEM education? Yes, it is. But some people argue that, for example, Mark Sanders said it's a STEAM. But STEM definition has more there, and we don't need a STEAM separate definition though. So I want to bring those 4 areas in STEM education, which is my key idea of talk. In STEM education, the real world problem and career in STEM field, that's very important. And then it's an approach, and then it's also integration, and then also the goal of STEM education is STEM literacy. And then the gentleman says here, what society knows about STEM? What's the right landscape of science that the society has? Well, those are people who are living in the society, and STEM education should produce in a reasonable way. So STEM education has the goal of STEM literacy to achieve. So relatively new attention to a STEM, and for example, the integration. There are a couple of challenges. One is how and what degree the 4 subject areas are integrated in schools. That's not very clear. And then also, what impacts of the learning such integration might have. That's the question we should answer that. Integration terminology has a different meaning. For example, the disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and also the interdisciplinary, and then transdisciplinary. And well, you could see there, and there's a little bit of a difference in each. But we could interchangeably use that languages in STEM education. Integration curriculum has a long history in the United States, and as you can see there, so let me go up. Probably if you're it's on. Okay, thank you. Benchmark for science literacy. If you're science educators, you all know that, and in America, and that also the integration, and then also the national science education standard, also the integration there too. And more importantly, standard for technical literacy, that standard also integration too. And then 30 years ago, my institution, Illinois State, and they got the two major funding from NSF, and then we actually developed the integrated curriculum, not an approach, it's a curriculum. So we produced the curriculum book, and then also we sell it to schools and nationwide. But sadly, and not many schools adopted our product, integration curriculum. There are a lot of reasons, because they are not on test, the statewide test, so they are not choosing our integrated curriculum that we produced. But you could, if you come to our Illinois State, and you could see that we give out to the integrated curriculum for free. Then what research agenda do we have in STEM education then? So we need to identify and also characterize the existing approaches to integrated STEM education. Because it's a lot of approaches that we are using, and to what degree and how integrate STEM in our teaching then. So we need to identify it, and then also the characterize the effectiveness of each approaches to our student learning. And then secondly, we are to review all the evidence for the impact of integrated approaches on the student learning. So we need to do that, and so far. And then specifically, then what research says about the STEM education. So it's going to be a long, it took me a time to put it all together, the research on this one. So I use the framework for STEM education made by NAE, National Academy of Engineering, and NRC, National Research Council. And they published this framework in 2014. And then here you could see goal for students, goal for teachers. And then also the outcomes for students, outcomes for teachers. So why we are bringing the teachers here? Well, because teachers are the ones, key components to produce that students who are able to learn the knowledge and skills to solve the problem and required by the 21st century. And then also nature and scope of integration. This is a very gray area. It's not very clear-cut yet. We're still struggling on that too. So we need to do more research on that. And then also implementation. Because the teachers are not trained how to teach engineering. The teachers, prospect teachers who are in the teacher education program in any higher ed institution, even Estonia and the United States, and they do not have an engineering background. We're still not teaching that. Then how can we expect them to teach STEM without engineering? Especially when you following the NGSS, Next Generation Science Standard. So we got to do a lot about professional development. And I cannot do, gather all the research evidence about the 4 areas. So I want to summarize research evidence in two areas right here: learning and achievement. What do students learn about STEM? What do students achieve through STEM education? So that's the one evidence. And then the evidence about the interest and identity. Identity means, do they see them as a person who seek their career in STEM field or not? So we need to do a study. What approaches is more effective than other approaches? So there are a lot of studies in these two areas. I'm going to show quickly. And students' achievement and subject-specific knowledge and problem-solving ability and the ability to make a connection between domains is not extensive. So we still need more research on that. So we need to gather evidence on this. And the concerns are with the design of studies. So each study they design, and then finding evidence of the effectiveness of approach is different from study to study. So there is a concern about the design of a study. So we need to do more research on that. And then integration can lead to improved conceptual learning. That's the good news. But the effects vary depending on the nature of the integration. For example, if you put more engineering than the mathematics, then it could be effective. But if you put more math than the engineering, there will be less effect. So effectiveness is varying depending on the nature of our integration. So we are not unified in finding the evidence to show the effectiveness of it. So, and then assessment is quite a bit of a concern that we have at this moment. And so most of the studies of STEM learning lies in each discipline singly, but do not measure students' ability to make a connection across the disciplines or their proficiency of problem solving. So this is an area we need to improve how to assess the students' achievement. And then secondly, assessment instrument on integration is very rare because of the theories and tests have a generally focus on content area, specific concept and procedures. So we need to develop the assessment tools and instruments that measures the students' ability and learning in a reasonable way. And what about the integrating math and science? When you are sitting there, if we, just like MSP, Math and Science Partnership, if we teach mathematics in science, then students will learn more effectively. Well, here's the study there. Well, studies are integrating mathematics and science. There are a lot of studies there, like the Berlin and Lee and Cherniak and Hurley and Pang and Good. But Cherniak and her colleague said that very few empirical studies of the integration with science and math. So not a lot of empirical studies are done so far. And many of them published articles were theoretical in nature. So we don't see really it worked. But NSF, Math and Science Partnership, as I said, decreased the gap from the white, dominated group, and also the African American and the minority group. The achievement gaps is reduced. That's a good sign. but we're not sure really, the students in general, they learn the science more meaningfully. And then Hurley, this is Marlene Hurley, her research is quite extensive. And then she did the meta-analysis of 31 studies about integration. That is positive, but the effect size is a little different. So it's effect size is a low on math achievement and then high on science somehow. Well, she didn't explain then why that happened. And then engineering, learning science and mathematics in the context of engineering then in STEM education. This is very important. And then we put a lot of efforts and used a lot of money and tax money on that. And then there are two major projects. So you might recall EIE, Engineering Elementary, and then the other one is Project Lead the Way, and probably you know that. And the engineering is elementary. Actually, it was done by the museum in Boston, the Science Museum in Boston. Their project that has 4 million students and 52,000 teachers. They are exposed to EIA programs, and it's a quite extensive program. And then it says that the design-based approaches are positive. So we got the evidence for that. And Project Lead the Way, 400,000 and students, they are exposed to, they are using a Project Lead the Way, that project. What that is you make the, what is that? The airplane. You manipulate some of the engineering piece, and then see it works by using mathematics and engineering design. So a lot of schools adopted that project, and they used it in their school curriculum within the formal education, not only the informal education setting. So, but this one, has the mixed result. All low-income family students, they increase their meaningful learning on education at the engineering, versus high-income family students show the small gains somehow. And then students that may not spontaneously making connections between the device being designed and then related scientific concept. Although they know the scientific knowledge and also engineering ideas, but they are not able to make a connection to solve the problems, to make the better airplane. So there's some disconnection there. And students tend to focus on the aesthetic aspect. You know what it means? So when you think about the design, then how beautiful it is, and they think about that rather than, how engineering concept work and make it work. And also the Chris Mond and studied about the expert and the non-expert. So expert recognize the opportunity to connect with the science idea, but not expert that design that misses them. This is a so important result. The students are non-expert. They are not able to make a connection at the right time when they try to solve the problem. So they need the STEM education with the teachers as an expert support. And then learning science and mathematics in this context of engineering, scientific knowledge is gained through engineering design. And then this approach can be effective if the concepts are introduced when the students engage with their design activity. So design activity does help students to learn scientific knowledge. So this is the finding and the evidence. And what about the learning mathematics in the context of a technology then? And Stone, the colleague, and a promising result on the mathematics and as the career and technical education courses in high school. And then Burghardt and colleagues and a promising result in infused mathematics in a 20-day middle school engineering technology courses. So it's a positive result. And what about the learning about the engineering technology then? There are few studies, but pilot studies conducted as part of the large-scale curriculum. You see that the large scale is quite challenging. It's a time issue and a money issue. And then this one is very unique. In New Jersey, they used a lot of money and then long time. Large scale is, let's say, engineering our future New Jersey. It's a collaborative project with this area, these institutions. Stephen Institute of Technology and New Jersey Department of Education and the National Center for Technological Literacy and the Museum of Science in Boston, which is EIE. And then they all get together, try to find the evidence, the effectiveness of learning about engineering technology. So this is a promising. They produced a promising result on their student learning when they learn about engineering and technology together. So we got the evidence for that. And so summary then, learning and achievement. Integration of a STEM concept in applied setting can yield increase the conceptual learning in disciplines. But too many inconsistency in implementing or assessing STEM programs. That's a little disadvantage and drawbacks. And the student learning appears to differ for science and mathematics. And so, learning and achievement, students learn science better than the mathematics when they learn through STEM education. So that's what they found so far. And the integration shows the improved result on assessment of a specific concept using intervention, but not in general mathematics. So this is a little tricky to interpret it. And lack of consensus on the definition of integration. As I mentioned, integration is a gray area. We are still struggling to define in a reasonable way because of too many different approaches to it. What about their interest and identity? Fostering development of a student's interest and identity in STEM is an important potential outcomes. Why we are doing the STEM education then? We want to teach science in an appropriate way and then the relevant way to solve the problem that they will face when they live in the 21st century, right? Then what do we expect them to be? That we want our next generation to go into the STEM field than others. That's our goal. So when they go to a STEM education, they need to have an interest. They need to have an identity. So what does the research says about that? And the interest and identity are thought to lead to continued engagement in a course selection, college major, and career path. That's what we believe, and the research supports that several programs support that idea through STEM education. And then the measures of interest in STEM are more common in study of out-of-school programs. So summer school, summer camp, and also the non-NGOs program, students that participate in the STEM education, they develop their interest and identity. And we don't have many STEM programs that is implemented in the formal school setting yet. Remember, my institution created the integrated curriculum, but not many schools chooses that in their school yet. And then measures of the identity developed is less common than the interest. That's the one drawback in the study of interest and identity. There are some sort of studies about interest. A STEM program can support the development of maintenance of interest in STEM field, and we know that, and we have a couple of studies there. And then typical programs and interventions, school-based projects and curriculum units, after-school programs, and summer camps. So those are programs that promoted students' interest and interest than the identity. And then we've seen positive effects of students that developed and continuation of interest in STEM field. And then out-of-school programs, and it's a tech bridge, that's the program name, and then focusing on the girls and the interest development. They've seen the positive impact, and almost 90% of a girl who participated in tech bridge, they increased their interest in STEM field, which is good. So we need more female in STEM area. So tech bridge program is a good way to implement it in school. And so enrichment program, and also they've seen the positive effects. And identity study, ROMS her studies are very rare, but she gave a very good research outcome on that. And so she found that the flexibility of the program and value of doing a project both in and for the community support STEM-related identity development. So they put the STEM education in the community, and then also they realized that, wow, this why is important and valuable to study STEM in their community. That's a very good way to develop identity of a STEM. And summary then, generally, research on STEM interests show the promising findings, but studies vary different in quality. And the last one is the research on STEM identity is a very preliminary study. So if you're interested in a study about STEM, then the identity study will be more important than the interest, because a lot of studies are done already about the interest development. So what does this mean then? Well, we need to conduct more research on how people learn to determine how integrated experience in STEM might support learning, thinking, interest, identity development, and then conversely, why they might do a little to change students' attitude, thinking, and behaviors. So we still need to do more research on that. And conclusion, based on these findings, and we are informed by situative cognition and so social, cultural, and then cognitive aspects, and then pragmatist perspective, and then constructivist perspective. So we are able to, hypothesize both advantages and disadvantages for learning from integrated experiences in STEM education. And then secondly, and it is not surprising that we currently lack sufficient evidence to substantiate the myriad claims. Let's say there is a good for developing an interest, is a good approaches when you put it in the community and context and the culture, that it might be effective to develop a student's identity in STEM. Those are the claims that we could argue, but yet we need to do more research and adding more research and then put it in the school curriculum, formal school curriculum, rather than the out of programming. So this is what is said in published article this year, and so that means we still need to do more research on that. Although we do have some, very clear evidence on that, but we still need to do more. Why it take the 30 years to put that STEM education as a clear idea of a curriculum in school setting? So NGSS, engineering, is added too, based on all the research. And we don't just do out of blue, out of sky. And so STEM education is what we need to do as a science educators, and we need to teach it to prepare students that seek their career path in STEM fields, so that our country become more competitive to sustain our quality life as we do. Well, this is my presentations. So if you have any question, so we have 2 minutes or something.
And now, please, questions. Okay, I extend to 5 minutes questions. But whoever is asking, just first of all, say who you are, very shortly, just your name. So please.
Oh, thank you. I'm Rachel Mamluk-Naaman from the Weizmann Institute in Israel. And actually, I have a comment, not a question or a suggestion. When you talk about the integration of mathematics and science, maybe if you look at it now, or if you will add, it will be better. Because now the mathematics and, explaining phenomena with numbers, like with coronavirus, or like with the pollution, maybe this can bring together science and mathematics. A suggestion, if you thought about it.
I do completely agree. One of the ideas of practices is computational mathematical thinking. So we got to practice it in teaching science. And the coronavirus is all about the numbers. And so those are people who don't believe the vaccination is not effective. It's all based on the numbers, right? So we want to teach mathematical thinking so they can understand the science better. So it's a phenomenon should brought into us, formal education in science teaching setting. So that's an excellent suggestion. Yeah.
Thanks. My name is Eric Roldan. I'm from the University of Tartu, a PhD student. And now, since I am more into the arts part and how to integrate it with the STEAM, would you say that passion is one of the key points that maybe can bring identity to students, especially in the early stages of STEM education? So they making here a link with the initial opening talk. what do you do when you bring STEM education to students so they can, instead of probably saying that, okay, this I am learning to pass a course, but instead of that, maybe they are building this identity to, I am able to create things with the STEM education, not able to pass an exam maybe. So I don't know if passion is part of this identity research field that may bring a solution to a long-term impact in STEM education. What would you think?
I think that passion is quite closely related to our interest. So if you're interested in something that you have a passion for it, so if you're interested in the STEM area or STEM field, and then you have a passion, so passion might be a good indicator and or the motivator to seek their career in the STEM fields. So a study about passion is a good way to do some research about STEM education. Yeah, I never seen the paper regarding a passion, but it's a good topic though. So as a PhD student, yeah, go for it. Yeah, I will review your article later then.
Excellent.
Okay. Hello, my name is Laurie, PhD student from also Tartu University. I have the question, so to make it long story short, if you want to make it pumpkin seed soup, are we still in the ingredients or we are talking now spices level?
I'm sorry, I'm lost. What is that again?
Well, the STEM thing, all the things, after some years we want to, based on the evidence, we can see that it works, but we still need to do something, or we have to change some components there. That was my soup idea. So after like 2030, we should put this into our curriculums and start to use it to do all the textbooks and things. And I don't know, 2050, we should have those high numbers already in the science field. But my question was, are we still, if we want to make the soup in there, where we want to change some ingredients, or are we we have all the ingredients and we are in the spices level? There are some mini updates.
Well, to my opinion, we have a potential to change ingredients or spice or whatever. Only when we on a consensus. Thomas Kuhn, paradigm shift. Scientific truth cannot be established by an objective criteria, but by consensus. And he's a relativist, as you know, and versus Karl Popper, he's an objectivist. He criticized Thomas Kuhn so much, and because scientific theory cannot be proven, but by the falsified, and that's how the scientific knowledge advances. But I do agree in some, but not 100%. But I'm more with the Thomas Kuhn, so by consensus. So if we are on consensus, we could change it, STEM, we could put it on something else, then we could change it. So it's open to change. But you gotta be through consensus though.
So thank you. That was the last question.